Have you been painting with watercolor for a while, practicing as often as possible, but when you finish a painting, you feel like it still looks a little bit flat instead of realistic and dimensional? I'm going to take a wild guess that maybe no one has ever really shown you how to use lights and darks in a way that helps your painting stand out and look more believable. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how understanding your lights, midtones, and darks can make such a difference in the way that your painting looks. And once you start to recognize those value changes, it becomes so much easier to know what needs to stay light, what needs to go darker, and how to give your subject a little more form and dimension. So if this sounds like you, come on along and paint with me. What we're going to do is, which I have already done, is begin by taking our line drawing, using a kneaded eraser and lifting our lines up so that they're barely visible. And the reason that we do this is so when we finish our painting, it doesn't look like a cartoon or a coloring book, and we're not going to have those dark lines. That is step one to creating a more realistic looking painting. Now, saying that, I want to also say that sometimes, depending on the painting and the look you're going for, you can leave your pencil lines in strategically. But for this today, it's a simple olive, and we're not going to do that. The first thing that I want to do is tell you what I'm using. The colors that we're painting with is Nickel Azo Yellow, Green Gold, Pyro Crimson, and Phthalo Blue. I'm using two of my favorite brushes, which is Rosemary & Co. Designer Series 344, a size 4 and a size 2. So let's begin. I'm going to start out by just wetting the whole area of the olive, putting a lot of water on there and allowing that water to get settled into the paper. And then when I put my paint on, it of course is going to follow the water, which means that my paint is going to settle into the paper as well. And as we're building washes and layers and glazes on top, that first wash has kind of embedded into the paper, so the chances of it moving are highly unlikely. Now, not to say that you can't lift those colors out, because some colors are easy to lift, more so than others, but if you're using the right tools and you need to get back to the white of the paper, you certainly can. Now, one thing that I've done that I did not mean to do, that I'm going to correct right now, is I had not intended to put water on my highlight. So I just dabbed that up with a paper towel, and now I'm going to paint around that highlight area. All right, I'm going to tilt this up so you can see that I have a lot of water on there. See, it's even puddling a little bit. I'm going to let that just settle on into the paper, and when it's not quite this shiny anymore, that's when I will start adding my paint. Now we can see that the paper still has a shine to it, but it's not really puddling like it did before. So this is the time when I want to start adding my color. I'm actually going to start out with a bluish green, and I'm mixing together some of my phthalo blue and my green gold together. There's a couple of places right along the outside edge where there's a highlight, and it's a very pale green-blue color. So I'm going to add that in first. I see it over there, and I see it down here. So that is very, very pale, but we're going to be building on top of this. Next, I'm going to grab some of the Nickel Azo Yellow, and just to help keep things bright, I'm going to put this yellow pretty much everywhere else. I'm going to allow it to dry, and then I will come back in and start adding my other colors. Remember to paint around your highlight. There's some areas over here on this side that need to be more blue, so I'm not adding my yellow in those areas because I don't want it to turn green instead of my blue color. Taking a little bit more of that blue, and I'm going to go ahead and put this light blue over here. That just serves as a reminder to me that this is where my bluish color is, and it starts mapping it out as well. Okay, so it's time to allow this to dry. Now that this first base wash is dry, we're basically going to do the same thing again, but this time we are increasing the values, adding more color, and this is where things are going to start to take shape. So again, I'm just getting water on here first. I'm going to start out with my bluish green color. I'm dropping it in here and bring it around the side. If it starts to travel further than I want it to go, I'll just rinse my brush and clean it, and then push that color back a little bit. Now I'm going to mix some of the green gold and the phthalo blue together to make more of a springy kind of a green. It needs to be a little bit darker, but it needs to go a little more green right here. I'm going to rinse that out, and underneath I'm going to go back into my green gold, but I'm just getting a tiny amount on there because I do want to keep this area light. I'm picking up a little tad of the blue-green, dropping it in over here where that highlight is. Following that on around, and see how light it is. I do not have much paint on my brush at all because I'm wanting that to stay light. Now I'm going to mix together some of the green gold, a little bit of the phthalo blue. So that's given me a very intense, darker green. But I want to put some of my crimson color in there, and I want to turn it more of a dark olivey kind of green. And then next I'm going to use the green gold with a tiny bit of yellow, some of the pyrrole crimson, and I'm creating a greenish brown color. So I've got it brown now, and I'm going to take just the smallest little touch of the blue and mix that in. Now adding a little more yellow because it's gone a little bit too red on me, and I'm going to add a little more of the green. So let's see, I want to make sure that it's not drying out on me before I start adding these colors. So what I'm doing right here is I am starting to add in the roadmap for where the darker values are going to go. So I've got this nice warm color in there. Pick up a little bit more and put it back on this area. Now I'm going to take some of that really dark green that I made. I'm going to put some right in here. It's a little bit on the bluer side, so I'm going to add some more yellow to that. Okay, here we go. I'm rinsing out my brush. I'm picking up just the green gold, and I'm going to use that. I'm going to mix that in so that this doesn't go quite as harsh right yet. I'm blending all of this together. But see how creating these darks and lights are starting to give this some shape? Now I've just got my green gold, and I'm putting that out here. And see what I did right there? I dropped some water. So I'm going to have to fix that, or else it's going to be a bloom. So I'm taking my dark green and putting it back in there, and then mixing some of that yellowy brown color back in there. Now I'll go back in with my green gold. I got a little wonky down here. I'm going to take my paper towel and try to blot some of that up, and then I will take my eradicator brush and straighten that up after it's dry. But for now, we're starting to get some shape here. I've got a dry brush, and I'm just pushing some color around. I'm going to take that dark color. I'm going to drop some more in here. See how I'm just moving my brush around in little circles? Now I'm going to pick up just some of my yellow this time. I'm going to add some yellow in here. Just getting little bits on my brush. Lifting a little bit of color out right there. Creating that highlight. Adding this light, this reflected light back in down here. Just picking up some excess color that I don't really want right there. So what I need to do now is I need to, again, let this fully dry. And then I will come back and work on it again once it is dry. Everything's nice and dry, and I've actually gone around and cleaned up my outside edges just a little bit because they were not perfectly straight, and I wanted to whip those back into shape before I move forward. So I can see what I'm needing to do here is start working wet on dry with some really watery consistency of paint, because I don't want to start going too dark too quick here. And I'm putting my green that I made, that was just the blue and the green gold together. So I need to darken this up over here a little bit. So I'm going to put some of that in. And I'm actually going to go ahead and pick up some of that really dark green. And some of that needs to go in right here. Now, you're probably thinking, well, you just lightened all that up. Why are you darkening it again? Once you've been painting for a while, you'll start to recognize things like that, that you will do something and then after it's dry, you look back at it and think, I probably picked up too much color, or maybe you needed to add more color. So it's one of those things that as you go along, you'll just notice those types of things, and then you can come back in and rework it when you see them. So that's what's going on here with me and this area right over here. Okay, I'm going into that blue-green again, because I do need to put some more of that in right up here. To keep from having any harsh edges, I'm just taking my water and working it in right there. Remember that color I made that was kind of that warm golden color? I'm mixing a little more of my green gold into it and working that in right here. Okay, let's take a look. I'm going to pick up some more of that bluish green, a thicker consistency, and put it in right here. I'm going to bring that on around a little bit. Now I'm going to go into my green with that beigey color that I created. Add a little more in here. Then I'm going into just the green gold. Everything's really watery at this point. Putting some more in there. Clean brush with some water. Come down through here. Okay, I'm going to get some of that green gold again. And I'm going to add a little bit right in here. Lighten it back up just a touch right in here. I'm going to do some lifting as well. I'm going to take a little bit of just my yellow, drop that in this area. This is just water. See, I've got a little splotch down there that I will clean up. Okay, so that's looking fairly good. Just wanting to lighten this a little bit. But I think what I'm going to do is let this dry and then come back to it and lift out some color where I feel like I need it lightened a little bit more, and fix that little spot right there. So I'll be back with you in just a minute. All right, here we go. Finalizing a few things. I am just going to paint wet onto dry again. I think what I'm going to do is come in here with just a light wash of just the phthalo blue by itself. green. My golden color. Green gold. Some azo yellow. Or nickel azo yellow, I should say. There is also an azo yellow, but that is not what I'm using right now. All right, once again, I'm going to let this dry. Then I'm going to come back with my eradicator brush and I'm going to lift out some of the light and soften up this edge around this bright highlight. Okay, this is the part where things are really going to start to pop. So I have my Rosemary & Co. Eradicator brush, and this is the small size. I've dipped it in water and then tapped a little bit of water out so that I can come in here around this highlight and soften it out a little bit, because it is a bright highlight, but it doesn't have a stark edge. The edge is really soft and kind of blended. So that's what I want to get it to look like here. And I'm just using my eradicator brush with some water on it just to get that green to be a little bit disturbed and start lifting a little bit so I can get that soft look around the edges. This time I've kept my brush really wet and I'm just pulling some of that paint into the center to soften it out even more. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of blue, dab that on. Now I'm going to turn my attention over here, and I have a very wet brush, and I need to lift out some light right over here. So see how I'm just coming out to the edge and then pulling that color toward the center? Then I'm going to lightly blot it. Now I'm moving really slow. I'm not wanting to lift too much color too quickly, so I'm using a little kind of a sweeping motion instead of a scrubbing motion so that I can pick up a little bit of paint at a time, because the last thing that I want to have to do is go back in and repaint because I took out too much. So I'd rather just take my time, move slowly, and get the right amount of lift for the right value instead of having to let it dry and then go back and put more paint back over it. This is our olive finished. Now, the purpose of this was to work on lights and darks to help emphasize a realistic painting. So let's take a look at what we've got here. We've got our light source coming from this side. We've got our bright highlight where light is shining directly on this olive. And then as it goes to the darker side, our dark values and colors are getting more gradual. Because this is a cylinder shape object, the light is going to creep around and then start to fade, just like if you were to think of the moon or something similar to that. Moon maybe isn't the best subject to use for this, but if you just think about something round, you could think of an egg or a Christmas ornament or a ball, and when you're looking at it, you see the bright side, and then you'll notice as you start going around to the opposite side where there's no light, it gradually gets to the really dark colors. So that's what we have done here with this olive, is go from our lightest lights all the way around to our darkest darks. So your lights and your darks is what's going to give you shape and form and depth. If you found this tutorial to be beneficial and helpful to you, I would love it if you would like this tutorial, and subscribe to my channel. That way you can keep learning right along with me.